Hello everybody, I'm Mango Thunderslice, and today we're talking about why California, and in truth the rest of liberal America, is basically doomed, right? And you know me, I'm a gold pill. I'm always about, we're not doomed. I'm not about the doom porn, all the other YouTubers who are always saying that all the world is about to end because of 5G, or because of the Democrats, or because of the Republicans, or because of anything else, right? But there's a certain point where I have to say, it's like even people who are friends of mine or family, I have to back up and say, hey, there's nothing I can do for this person. This person is basically on their own path. They don't want help. You cannot help someone who will not help themselves. And any more that you try is actually not only hurting them, it's hurting yourself, right? But California, I wanted to catch you guys up, as you see on the hat, and I've been mentioning the state of Jefferson, right, is a growing political movement in California, a secession movement for the northern 21 counties or so to essentially form a new state and potentially bring some of the southern counties of Oregon with them. There is precedent in this country for that process. West Virginia split off from Virginia, New Hampshire from Vermont, I think even Maine from New York. Those were a long time ago, but the point is that there is a specific legal framework in this country to create a new state under the Constitution. And where in other places in the world where there's freedom movements, like in Catalonia of Spain, they don't have any constitutional tradition, right? They're coming out of Catholic monarchies, right? Spain at no point has had the legacy of, Republican democracy that, say, even even France, right, which has its own set of issues, right? They still have more of that tradition of the Republican tradition of, citizens governing the government, right? Whereas in Spain, it was very much the autocratic rule from the top down. And so that's essentially what they see when they try to secede with Catalonia. Even though they have the wealth, they have the willpower on the popular sense, they can't actually do it because the government is still has basically unitary authority to shut it all down. And so they're having a hard time with that. Where in this country, we have a lot of momentum if we were actually to pick up the tools that we already have, right? They might have run roughshod over the Constitution, but it still does exist. And it still is technically the basis of law in this country. We can use the law to our advantage, but we have to be awake and aware. We have to be conscious citizens walking forward into this battle, not just finding ourselves out on the field and, unarmed and unclothed and all the rest. Right? It's time to get real, right? The fourth turning is at hand. So I just wanted to read an email that came from me, go through a few news articles today, continuing on the theme of the video yesterday about where we're going in 2020, and the gold pill revolution, getting people not just red pilled, not just black pilled, but aware of all the things and aware of their specific personal power to affect the situation, regardless of what Trump does or regardless of what anybody else does. From Marianne Williamson to Joe Biden, it doesn't matter, because each individual person who is acting and conscious is the locus of control, right? It's in your hands. So if you're complaining about how the world is all fucked up, then, basically I want you to give me an explanation of what you're doing about it, right? Otherwise, I just simply can't even converse with a person who's still on just the bitching mentality of fifth world, right? So, but anyway, here we go. Showing the insanity of California. California school lets student play joy to the world after effective legal pressure. Rather than read this, I'll sum it all up. Essentially, there was an 8th grade girl here in California who goes to a charter school. I guess she's homeschooled, but they also have like charter schools, which are homeschools. And so she wanted to play Joy to the World for the Christmas or the holiday celebration at the school. And she basically, she wasn't even no one was going to sing the lyrics, but apparently because the lyrics in the song include references to Savior and heaven, it was shot down, right? And so this homeschooled 8th grader just wanted to play a miraculous piece of work, and which is funny because I'm pretty sure the work, even though it has those references, it's not like an explicitly Christian piece. I'm pretty sure even the European Union uses Ode to Joy. Oh, maybe it's Ode to Joy, not Joy to the World. Anyway, point is, basically she was not able to play the song on piano because it has reference to things that are religious in the song. And so, that's in a public school, that's not surprising at all. In a charter school, it's pretty bad. Especially, as I pointed out, there's a bill that passed this earlier this year, essentially making illegal the medical exemptions for the vaccine program. So now basically every single child who goes not just to a public school, but to a private school, to a charter school, will all have to basically follow the CDC vaccine mandate. And if there's any deviance, then they can't go to school, right? And so we and a lot of other parents are looking at loopholes in the system, finding ways to take our child to schools that are not registered, basically getting under the threshold of hours per week so that it's not technically considered enrollment. There is a popular resistance to all of this tyranny that's taken place. And, the more that they push is the more that it gets pushed back, right? And, the farther they push, eventually they're going to push the creation of a 51st state of Jefferson, right? And it's cognitive dissonance, right? It's people who their view of reality doesn't actually match with reality itself. And so they have very stressful lives, a lot of anxiety, a lot of neuroticism, because what they think should exist, it doesn't. And so they basically, their response to that, rather than a rational person, which would, change their mind to the state of reality and try and form an alignment there, instead, they try and just impose their delusion onto reality itself, which doesn't really work that well, but that's what the mass of leftist politics is today. And it goes to a point, we were a little bit sad about not being able to put our daughter, and, now we're going to have a second daughter. We were a little bit sad about that, not being able to put them in school, right? We wanted to go to like a private school, Waldorf or a Montessori. And the fact that we can't do that is a little disheartening. But then we see things like, even in the charter school, the homeschool kid can't even play a musical song that, whose otherwise lyrics have reference to religion, right? This isn't even about whether or not you believe in God, whether or not you believe in religion or anything like that. It's just about freedom to raise your children and freedom to speak and, the basic freedoms that this country was built on. And these people are so deluded that these basic human rights that this country was founded on don't mean anything to them anymore. It's very sad. But, when I start to see that one of the recent Jefferson meetings, they went over this group, Informed Parents of California. Right now, I'm very glad that, maybe the vaccine issue just solved the problem for us and just eliminated the timeline altogether of putting our kid through school out in here, California, because it is worse than I even thought. Forget about the vaccine issue, right? What they're actually teaching kids in school is disgusting, right? So here's Informed Parents of California, their website. Informed Parents of California is a statewide resource to inform parents on critical issues that impact our children's educational well-being and the role of parents in education. The goal of IPOC is to have transparency, accountability, and parent involvement at our local public school board and state education level. So basically, they cover plenty of topics, but primarily what they're calling comprehensive sexual education, CSE, in the California schools. And this is far from just a California thing. They're implementing this across the board in all the liberal schools across the country. I mean, I'm sure in the Obama years, I'm sure they weaseled this into, all the curriculum across the country. But in any case, it's still up to the states to decide what goes into the curriculum, and for a large part, the California Healthy Youth Act, right? They slip it all in under AIDS education and sexual education, but it is absolutely disgusting. And so I've got the brochure here. I'll basically click over to the digital version. But basically, the California Healthy Youth Act, AB 329, mandates comprehensive sexuality education, CSE, which must affirmatively recognize all sexual orientations and expressions. Therefore, explicit details about how to perform vaginal, anal, and oral sex are promoted to children as normal and pleasurable for all. Parents should be advised that gender and sexual orientation topics can be presented in all grades across all subjects. So, they presented, a lot. I'm not going to get into the details here because it's absolutely sickening. But to those of you who live in California, go to informedparents.org and check out, you know, the work that they're doing and what is being weaseled into your child's, you know, curricula in school. It's absolutely disgusting, and it has no basis in medical science. It's absolute garbage for the sake of the social justice communist narrative, unraveling the basis of the human family, including all the way down to basic identity and sexuality and gender roles. Right. It is very bad, and they brought out this information as if it was just going to be to like middle schoolers and high schoolers, but they, you know, again have slipped it into even elementary school, and it's very bad. One thing that you'll see, as I'm sure you guys are probably woke to, is this genderbread person thing. So basically, yeah, that identity, attraction, and sex are all just independent variables, and there's no correlation between them. And basically teaching kids to just you know, not even try to adapt themselves to a normal you know, gender identity. That basically just, and again, when you see this all in combination with the gender bending hormones that are in plastics and in the water supply, especially in these urban environments, where are we really seeing all these trannies and all this gender bending nonsense is in the cities, right? You don't see it out in the country. You don't see a whole bunch of trannies out in the country. But it's a mass biological and social experiment when we start messing with the endocrine system and the hormones. And what we get is this gender bend nonsense, and we get them basically teaching like hardcore porn in elementary school. And so there's no parental consent required. You know, basically, it's really disgusting. Again, it was very hard for me to sit through this whole presentation. This nurse who's like a mom of, I believe, 5 kids, and she basically found out about this through her own daughter. Her daughter came home and was asking her mom about this. And she's a nurse, and basically, you know, came out and said, like, not only is this, you know, absolute nonsense from a perspective of medical science, but it's actually dangerous. They're teaching kids things that actually are more likely to get them exposed to sexual diseases, including, you know, HIV. But of course, as we've done videos otherwise, HIV is a virus that's never actually been isolated. They test by antibody counts, which is not, you know, any way to actually isolate a virus. There's a lot of shadiness and dubiousness in the whole HIV/AIDS thing, and which is all the more reason why this is so questionable and so suspect, because they used the cover of fraudulent medical science, which is HIV and AIDS, to slip in absolute overt scientific and medical fraud, which is this gender bending nonsense. And it's really bad. And again, they have to try and destroy the family, because the family is the basis of civilization, and they want to remake civilization in their image. But it's absolutely disgusting. So I just wanted to cover that. I encourage you guys to look into it, whether your parents in California or your parents in another state, because again, California and New York are the testing grounds, whether it's vaccines, gender branding, genderbread nonsense, all the rest of it. And if you want to be hip to what they will try and bring to your state and preempt it and knock it out before it even ever gets to a certain state of momentum, you know, this is why I bring these things up, so you can be aware of them. So we will move on to the some other articles just real quick. Press Watch, you know, Salon article. Yes, America is divided, but how and why and who benefits, right? And here's these idiotic Democrats basically lamenting the fact that you know, the country's divided. Actually, they're not lamenting it. They're lamenting the centrists, who are lamenting over the fact that people are so divided, right? NBC's Chuck Todd lamenting over the fact that Democrats are trying to have a conversation about what the president did, and Republicans are having a completely different conversation, as we couldn't even agree on the same set of facts. And this is the state of the entire debate across the board, is that there are different sets of facts in play, and that is because the media is absolutely lying to people. There is no basis or reality to any of it outside of their own internal universe that they are propagating. Just like we said in the last video, they are propagating a false universe that people who are hypnotized into watching the media, they think it's real. People like my family, people like most of California, they're so hypnotized in the media that they think this world is real, but it is absolutely fake. And if they took even 2 days outside of that matrix and just went and actually did real honest research on their own and actually grounded themselves into reality and did some real honest work, using their body and with the earth, then, maybe they'd come out of their nonsense and they'd wake up. But more likely not, because their entire identity at this point is invested in it. They have been so thoroughly broken down by their terrible home environments, again, the consequence of destroying the family. And so they are psychologically stunted, and they go to the media for, trying to fill in that void, and what you get is liberal America. And so here, basically, they are just so upset that that journalists like the New York Times, Salon is upset that the New York Times isn't willing to be more capital R resistance against Trump and completely toss aside any even notion of objectivity or journalistic rigor. Right, the New York Times, they're upset that the New York Times isn't liberal enough and doesn't eschew reality for the sake of liberal ideology enough. And even they're upset that basically the media is reporting that impeachment hearings aren't moving the needle on the public, public opinion. And so here he's upset that they're interviewing old white people in Wisconsin. And here you again show the cognitive dissonance and why they're so stupid and why their stupidity is the downfall of their whole program. They want to take over the world, but it relies on making people so stupid that they can't be actually relied on to complete the task and execute it. Right, so they're so upset about interviewing old white people. These aren't just old white people. They're Wisconsin voters, right? It's a swing state. The reason that Trump is in the presidency is because he played the actual electoral college, the actual game of election. To those who basically still complain about, oh, he didn't win the popular vote. Are you like a literal fucking retard? Are you serious? Why would he play a game by rules that don't exist? It's like playing basketball and you're upset that, the other team won if you count all the baskets as 1 point instead of 2 or 3 based on how far they are away behind the 3-point line. Well, those aren't the rules of the fucking game. The rules are the rules. And if you're playing by rules of the game that don't exist, you're an idiot. And anyone who tells you that you were right to do so is also a liar, a sycophant, and or an idiot. So, it's again, these liberals are so goddamn stupid that they can't even get the job done to they've already got the entire media, they've got half the government, right? They've got half the courts, they've got all the universities, but they can't get it done because they're teaching such bullshit and they're making themselves and their acolytes so stupid, and it can't make it happen. And to the point of censorship, right, a Fox News host was just suspended on Twitter for reporting the news. They are banning journalism now, right? And what he did was he shared the manifesto from, there was recently, I think yesterday or something, or maybe it was Saturday, a Saudi guy who I guess was an arms trainer who was learning on a U.S. military base, maybe a Navy base. He started shooting up the base, and there were 3 other Saudis there who were filming it, right? And I guess the night before, they basically had a party where they watched basically mass shooting videos and whatnot. And so basically, I guess this guy made a manifesto like all the other crazy MK Ultra shooters, and so this Fox News host shared it, and so he got instantly banned from Twitter. I guess Mike Cernovich also got banned from Twitter, or suspended or whatnot. But so I've had video basically for one of my videos recently got not quite a warning, but because I shared to one of the manifesto shooters. But again, they're trying to make history off of these events. They're trying to eliminate the Second Amendment, but we're not allowed to examine the historical evidence with these events. We're not allowed to go and actually look at the historical evidence of what these shooters were doing, why they did it, right? Because they just want to get the legislation done. We're not allowed to know anything. We're just supposed to be the dumb plebes who just go along with the tyrannical schemes. As Vincent James of the Red Elephants points out basically students are getting admitted to top universities due to affirmative action. They can't even do simple math. Right, it's again we're far past the point of just these rosy platitudes that for the sake of feeling good and la 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 multiculturalism diversity. It's actually killing our country at this point, and it's up to those of us who aren't cucks, who aren't losers, who aren't mentally weak, to basically just come out and start speaking the truth. Right, Vince, he is a good presentation. He's just showing that we are killing the country the more that we pursue these delusions at the expense of merit, at the expense of meritocracy, and promoting the best and the brightest to the positions of authority and power, because that is the only way that the system doesn't blow up. Right, and he shares numbers like these, just showing like SAT scores for different levels of academic achievement for different racial groups. And, basically, and this is from 1995, right? The graduate degree of a black American, or a black American with a graduate degree has SAT scores on average, at least in 1995, lower than whites and Asians with a high school diploma, right? And again, you can blame all of that, 100% of that, on just people's racism, right? There's some amount of it. Again, we're not like, saying there's no racism in society, but the more that we want to say that race doesn't exist and all differences in the racial achievements are because of racism, then basically you have to get checked at a certain point, because that's a lie. It's not 100% race. It's not 100%, just racism, right? There's a mix in between, but to ignore the differences is ridiculous, and it will kill the country, right? Again, it's the stupidity that is checking the effectiveness of the communist agenda, because the people who are trying to fulfill it are retarded. Desegregation plan, again, New York as the bellwether. They're eliminating all gifted and talented programs in New York. Why? Well, because it's apparently racist. It's basically that the the gifted and talented classes are filled with whites and Asians, and basically the other classes are filled with Hispanics and blacks. And so basically, in order to, we have to cut the tall grass, right? You can't raise up the short grass, and so we'll cut the tall grass. And it's very sad, and why I am not even remotely upset that my daughter can't go to school in California again. I am so much more confident in my own ability to implement homeschool curriculum for my daughters than any school in California or otherwise would be able to. So, game on. And out here in California, of course, will UC schools drop their SAT scores requirement, right? They're getting rid of SAT scores. Why? Because, yes, you guessed it, it's probably, it's just too racist. And the more that we have meritocracy in the system, the more that it's going to be accused of racism, because, well, there's different natural achievements and capabilities in the races. And so if we don't acknowledge that, then we basically just grind everything down until everyone has to be an idiot for the sake of the lowest common denominator. And it's very sad, because, again, I don't believe that, black people and Hispanics are fundamentally unintelligent. And again, their cultural factors matter more than intelligence, right? Whether you're white or black, right? It's, you can get by in life being a moral and upstanding individual. You don't have to be super intelligent to succeed in life and to live a meaningful, rewarding life, including, making, good money in your life to be able to support your family. But what you do have to have is a comprehensive emotional foundation for yourself, which comes from having a mom and a dad in the house, right? It comes from basically that emotional foundation. And as long as that doesn't exist because of welfare incentives for it not to exist, then we're just, it's the snake eating its own tail. And we're unfortunately going to have more and more, basically proletariat blacks who basically continue to vote for their own enslavement. And we have the same thing with whites, but again, it's just different dynamics. And it's sad because, all knowledge is treated as equal until we've got a whole bunch of blacks running around saying that the earth is flat, right? And, you know, even people that I very much respect on the internet, Savan Bomar for one, over at, you know, what used to be the Resistance is now Secret Energy, right? Is a very intelligent person and is now a flat earther. All these people are disbelieving in the white man's world so much that they come to the point of saying that the earth is flat and disbelieving literally everything that exists, including the whole of scientific knowledge. And, you know, the more that we go down this line of removing meritocracy from our system because it's perceived to be prejudice, I mean, it's just, we're just going to bifurcate the worlds that much more between fifth world, which completely lobotomizes itself and produces this, you know, these legions of morons to go and try and fulfill the wills of, you know, the oligarchs. But they're not going to be able to. It's just going to be a bunch of bumbling dunderheads just wobbling forth and then tripping over themselves. And meanwhile, we can have literally 3 to 7% of the population on the other hand. But if we're effectively mobilized and working together and, you know, conscious and coherent, I mean, it's going to be an easy fight for us, even with that. And of course, we have more than 3 to 7% of the population believing that the media is lying, you know, on a range of different issues, not just vaccines and politics, but all the rest. And so, why there is, you know, there is encouragement because, you know, even basically, you know, black Americans are waking up to the fact that the media are lying to them, that they're trying to control them by keeping them addicted to welfare, by keeping their communities completely destitute. And so, you know, even their whole plan of basically, you know, just using the people of color to completely overthrow the white man's world and, you know, throw us all into socialism is not even working because, again, Trump, you know, with civic nationalism has done a fair job of appealing towards the entire country who do believe in that patriotic ethos. And so, yeah, basically 34%. We'll see how it plays out in terms of actual voting. But the point is that red wave emanating from the center is just as strong, if not stronger, than the blue wave of, you know, basically illegal immigrants and, you know, refugees and all the rest coming into the country. We just need to, just like any business that you're trying to correct, we need to amplify the up and we need to reduce the down. And if we can do that, we will have a better delta and we'll have a more profitable and, you know, profitable society for everyone who takes part in it, not just the wealthy, but for everyone who is working and, you know, earning wages in a solid currency or a salary, whatnot. Trump now beats all Democrats in the swing states, right? The impeachment hearings actually were the the exact moment when the Democrats lost their edge over Trump, specifically in the swing states. And so, you know, Tim Pool covering this here, that Trump now beats all Democrats in latest poll, showing impeachment has cost all candidates their lead. And I got to tell you, one of the things I've wondered in the course of this whole impeachment thing is if this wasn't just this elaborate, indirect way of getting Joe Biden out as frontrunner, because it's so obviously incriminating of Joe Biden. Even if you assume that Trump did something wrong by, you know, quid pro quo with the Ukrainian president, even if you assume that was wrong, you have to also, if you want to be logically consistent, admit that what Joe Biden did was at least as wrong, if not more wrong. There was absolutely a quid pro quo, which he bragged about on television to, I believe, the Council on Foreign Relations. And now he's trying to say that it never happened, and he didn't even know that his son was there. And yeah, basically, this was all when he was actually in charge of Ukraine policy under Obama. It's like, you've got to be literally retarded to believe any of that. And amazingly, people in my family with college degrees believe that. And it's just absolutely staggering. Again, a degree means nothing if you don't have critical thinking. And that, for a lot of people, apparently they think they've got a lot more than they do. And basically, yeah, that's it, man. The state of Jefferson. The only other thing that I guess I'll bring up from the meetings, you know, basically this month is just a Christmas party, and that's tonight. I'm not sure if we'll be going out there. You know, basically we've got a little baby, so it's Christmas parties aren't really, or any parties aren't really our thing these days. But you know, is fire insurance, right? Because of the fires, that the fire insurance companies are now fleeing the state. And the people can't actually get fire insurance. And there's a backup state plan, but it costs thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars per month. And it's not even real coverage. It's like a backstop. It's not supposed to be used by lots of people. And so because of California's complete mismanagement of the forest, they're basically, the people out in the living out in the forest can't even get fire insurance for their homes. And some, mortgage companies require fire insurance in order to basically live in the house and fulfill the mortgage. So people are actually being forced out of their homes, not just because they burned down, but because California can't maintain a base level of safety for its citizens. And basically that people are being evicted from their homes because they can't get fire insurance. So, it's a very big problem, and this is not going anywhere. We've got some rain now. It just rained for, basically a week and a half. So, we won't have any fires, hopefully, fingers crossed for the time being. But this problem isn't going anywhere. California isn't about to start managing the forest effectively. I've got a business plan to, basically pursue that aim in this state and make money at the same time. I've been working on the plan for 10 years, actually. Maybe I'll introduce you guys to that plan in 2020. But the point is basically this is a problem we've got to solve, and it's not going to get better just leaving it to the commies in the Capitol. And at a certain point, there's a snap, right? And that snap is the state of Jefferson. And it's a very much a realistic possibility, again, that, this constitution of this country allows for that process to be fulfilled. And it's just a matter of us getting together, seizing the day, and recognizing that this crisis is not going to get better unless there's a breaking point, such as a secession movement. So that's my video today. Hope you all have a great day, and I'll be talking to you again soon. Cheers.
Ah.